Hey there. I know Amanda normally introduces here. It's fun to switch it up here. The topic we decided to talk about today is emotions, but not just any emotions, like accepting emotions of ourselves that we think are negative, and even emotions of others that we perceive as negative. This came about because I've been recognizing how when my son's sad, I want him to feel better, or if my boyfriend's upset or something's going on, like I want him to feel happier. Or if there's ever even a dynamic between us, I would want that smoothed out. Instead of just accepting you have a right to feeling the emotions that you feel, letting it go and just still being in this space of love and acceptance. Right?
There's just so many places we can go with this, from preconception all the way through pregnancy and post-birth. There's probably a lot of emotions that come up personally for people, and then you have to navigate the emotions with your relationships, and be that a partner or your friendships. And then, of course, post-birth, if we have a child, then we need to navigate the emotions of a child. And we have mentioned this in a past podcast that I actually just re-listened to, about how there's usually the bigger issue than the emotion itself is the fact that we are raised in a world that doesn't teach us how to be comfortable with emotions if they're
Mhm.
not ones that are approved of in many social, cultural settings. And that is where we get into trouble. I know this was a topic that you brought up. Did you want to
Mhm.
expand into this in some way, or did you have any download or wisdom around it, or is it just something you're struggling with right now?
I don't know about struggling, but it's coming to awareness, right? I definitely think that in those moments I do struggle at times, like trying not to fix things or change one's emotions. Because I also recognize that sometimes when I'm in certain emotions, like feeling sad, I actually want to be there and experience it and feel it. And I'm not necessarily ready at that point to get into a happy space, right? But I think that it's also recognition that in the internal emotions that we have as well are sometimes really hard to accept in ourselves and additionally in others as well. And I think like a big one postpartum especially, and I believe sometimes too in pregnancy, depending on the situation, and of course, depending on situation in the postpartum, but is that feeling of overwhelm, right? Like a really big feeling of overwhelm and wanting to get rid of it and trying to find things to soothe it. When in reality, sometimes it's just a matter of being with yourself and actually doing nothing, even though it feels like there's so much to do. And in that, just accept and be with that emotion and that feeling.
I think there's an interesting thing here, because there can be a real big question, because postpartum depression and anxiety or postpartum mood disorders are so heavily highlighted. And I understand the importance in making sure that people that they don't go unnoticed if
Mhm.
someone is really struggling. However, there can be a lot of confusion of that means I shouldn't have any kind of quote unquote emotion that's not seen as a positive, exuberant, happy emotion. And that's just not the truth, right? Your hormones are going to be drastically shifting. We live in a society that, to be honest, is just not ideal for supporting postpartum. I mean, pregnancy, it's getting better, but supporting the whole childbearing continuum, not in a really supportive place. And I'm in a class right now, and we talk a lot about there's the ideal and there's what should be, and there's what biologically and physiologically is best. And then there's what is, and having to really acknowledge what is and the emotions that might surround that reality of there's what is and where we are. And we can't ever look to where we want to go if we don't acknowledge where we are. And I think it's the same with emotions. We can't really just bypass our emotions. This has actually come into, I think, awareness a lot more in the past decade, of people understanding that processing and being with emotions, or what people call shadow work, being with the darker things, quote unquote, because there is dark and light to every aspect in our world. And I think we put associations with dark and light when really they're both just like a yin and a yang. They're just two different energies. And when we are able to sit with it, then, like you said, we can process it and let it flow and pass. Versus another metaphor I was given this year that I really liked is when we try to shove it down, it's like shoving a beach ball underneath water. And you like the more you press it down, the more pressure that builds to explode upwards. And that can be what we experience with emotions or really anything that we're not wanting to sit with and face. So I think on a personal level, that's the first thing I would want to just highlight with emotions in the whole postpartum. But I think a lot of people, what's not spoken to as much also is people struggle with this, especially in conception. I think people who are really trying for conception, and there can be a wide range of emotions, especially if you're trying harder, even if you're not trying and then you find out you're pregnant. Like the
Right.
range of emotions can be very wild and very, very diverse.
Yeah, and like to summarize what you're saying about what it is that you'd want people to know, like how would you structure that in a sentence or two?
I want people to know that it's okay to feel your emotions, and what we consider normal is not normal. What we would normalize as far as emotional states and emotional well-being is really drastically changing. And no emotion is good or bad. They are just energy in motion, right? We've all heard that's what emotion is. I also think that the more you're able to practice this with yourself, obviously, the easier it is with other people in your life, including your children. I always have this concentric circle model of connection, and a lot of what our world is really starving for right now, I think, is really true connection. And that starts with connection with you, like your own connection with yourself. And it's hard for you to have a grounding presence and connection with another if you don't have that first with yourself. So when we can do that with ourselves, with our own emotions, then when our partner is having a horrible day or in a depressive state or whatever it is, we can be a better grounding presence for them. We're not supposed to be their savior. And I think this comes back to another point that maybe you're feeling, question mark, taking things personally when people have emotions.
Definitely some trauma there that I'm getting over for sure. And that's the thing, it's a practice, right? When you're so used to feeling that you have to be responsible for other people's emotions because you're not responsible for any emotions. It's interesting because I even tell my son sometimes when I get upset, it's not you that made me upset. I'm responsible for my emotional well-being. You're not responsible for that, right? Like my emotions shouldn't be dependent upon his behavior. I really try to hit that home with him because, when I can in those states, right? It's not perfect, but really try to remind him like, hey, I'm responsible for my emotions. And yeah, sometimes if he does something that really upsets me, I'm feeling sad and your hug and kiss, although that's great and I love it, it's not going to make me feel better that XYZ broke or that had a lot of meaning to me and it's no longer in my life, right? It's really important to keep in mind. I think the other thing, like takeaway besides the takeaway of you're not responsible for anyone's emotional state, but your own, this idea that two emotions can exist at the same time. And I feel our culture, at least my upbringing, didn't really necessarily ground that into actuality for me. I can be loving and also still really angry, or it can be sad and happy at the same time. And being able to accept both of them, in reality, both emotions are valid and need that acceptance and space.
I would 100% agree with that. I think there is also this sense too, just as I was mentioning, of this guilt people feel sometimes for other people's emotions or responsibility. I think there's just as much, not just from another person, but from like our greater society. People will feel, they'll feel shameful, or in some senses, it's not even a sense of responsibility to the person, but especially I think with children, a sense of my child's having a big emotion and Therefore, I'm going to look a certain way because being that, yes, it's your child, but they're a child and they're expressing an emotion. And that's just an emotion.
Mhm.
It's something that's very natural, especially for children to do. Internalizing the greater culture, I think, again, speaks to our disconnection and our fear of being disconnected. What are others going to think of me? What if I'm outcast? What if I'm not accepted because my child is expressing themselves in a certain way? It's a hard one to do, but again, I feel the more grounded you are in yourself, the more you can allow your child to be a child and have an emotion and not take that personally from the child or feel guilted by anyone around you for what is happening.
I think that one's definitely, I think we've all seen it, right? The crying kid in the store, the I want this toy and the full of tantrum on the floor. Just like they really wanted that toy and they're gonna tell you about it, right? Came to mind as you're talking a little bit too about the responsibilities of the emotions and like the kids and how we relate. That idea of the emotion that we feel we should be having in certain situations, right? Or we should be feeling that kind of goes with the acceptance factor selves, but it's a lot of cultural conditioning and you should be feeling this way. And then on top of that, like feeling guilty or whatever feeling comes up from that, you're still not dealing with, your initial emotion. Now you're dealing with this other one of this perceived concept of other people or how you should be reacting or feeling or anything like that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know if I have too much more to say. My biggest thing is let yourself feel whatever emotions you're feeling because that's going to be the number one step to moving through a doorway that really allows for more space, more growth,
Mm.
more connection. I don't know about you. I am like a high highs, low person.
You feel deeply.
And I
You
think
don't.
the awareness sometimes when you
Yeah.
know that, you can then just ride the roller coaster a little bit. When you're going through the continuum of birth and childbearing, knowing that there's going to be ups and there's going to be downs, and same with postpartum or parenting, that when you know that, again, just it'd be like getting on a roller coaster
Mm.
and then being like, which people do, what the fuck did I do? And that's fine. But at least you have this awareness. I'm getting on a roller coaster, and there's going to be some loops and some ups and some downs and some things that are going to totally catch you by surprise. And then the more you can just ride with the ride, the flow,
Yeah.
the easier it's going to be.
100%.
I do have to say, having others to process with can be super helpful as well. So, be that a therapist or a really trusted friend or a family member, a sibling, a group that you can be in, having others that will listen is, I think, just as important. Somebody that can hold the emotion. They don't have to fix it. So having the others that can hold the emotion without fixing it is just as important when we're going through our emotions. And I get that sometimes we want to be alone. And I think there's a really strong value in being held and seen without any need to change the situation.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Strongly recommend finding spaces and places for that. And if you're entering into pregnancy or like just getting that support in place as soon as you can, wherever you are in the journey of it. So if you're at the beginning stages, great. You can put that in place now, have that there as backup. And if you're already a year into postpartum or whatever, it's never too late, finding just really centering and being with yourself and thinking, who do I have in my life that can be that? And
Mhm.
even just one person,
Right,
be
right.
valuable to have that.
Even if you don't have that at this moment, journaling can be extremely powerful too, because sometimes it's just like getting it out and seeing it from a different perspective really can help. Definitely not the same as the communication and connecting with another human, because that I think is, like you said, invaluable too. But if you don't have that at the moment, journaling, I think, can be another holding space until you are able to find someone or talk to someone further. I think the other things I just want to touch on in terms of emotions, and you've touched on it, but this idea that I feel like when we're in those emotions, they just feel like they're going to be with us forever. And not that we necessarily think that in the moment, but it's just as a way to remember emotions are going to come and go, right? Things are generally not going to always be in the state that they're in. And so if we can remind ourselves of that, I think it can be really helpful. But more importantly is that we're not our emotions. And I think that's where we get really tied up sometimes is like, oh, I'm overwhelmed about all these things that, I have to do, or I'm super sad because of X, Y, and Z. And just keeping in mind, like, the emotions are not who we are. We're not the overwhelm. We're not like the list of stuff to do. We're a whole being in experiencing life here
Yeah.
in whatever shape or form that's coming at us.
I like
Yeah.
that, emphasizing we are taught to do and not be. And I think, again, that avoids the emotion. So just being who you are, being with the emotion, and that to-do list will always, always be there. And oftentimes it doesn't matter if that gets postponed a month, a week, a month, a year. Things we think are very, very, very important. Think about it. If you were in a car accident,
Yeah.
it wouldn't happen. And it's okay. Life still continues and things work, which it does. Somehow those really important deadlines find a way of being pushed out a month, 2 months, a year, whatever it is. One other point that came to mind when you were talking was movement and what a powerful tool movement is with emotion. And again, it's like this energy in motion, but actually when you put your body in motion, allowing yourself to dance, or if you're feeling anger, we can link to this. Mama Gina has this, I think it's called a swamp. What does she call it? Like a swamp patrol. It's a rage ritual, basically. And that can be very powerful. Just even screaming into a pillow and banging your fists if you're angry, really exaggerating the emotion a little bit, or moving your body a way that feels good for whatever emotion it is you're wanting to express. Or even for me, I just like to go running. And that can help just allow emotions to flow. I literally have had some times where I was experiencing deep grief and going running and just crying so hard. It was the weirdest experience because I'm out of breath, and then I was out of breath from crying, but it felt really, really good. Any kind of movement you can do, even if it's soft, gentle movement, sometimes can really make a difference. Obviously, if you're in those early stages of postpartum, don't go out running. But some gentle walking, depending on where you are and things like that, can really, really make a difference. And just walking and crying.
I'm a big walker and crier and
Walk and
processor.
cry. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Look at the sunglasses or just don't look at people. But yeah, I'm a big one on that. So I get it. And also too, I think it's important to remember, especially postpartum, if it's difficult to get out, that breath is movement too. So if you physically can't move or whatever the case is, even around the house or dance, or if you want some form of like more stillness, because I think that does come up sometimes. There is movement and stillness. If you ever really try to be still, like you move a little bit. And then also the breath is a great way to get things moving too. You've done a lot of breath work too. So
I love breath work. I was actually just thinking the other day how I haven't done it in a while, and I do for a good breath work session.
Yeah. And breath work especially is something which should actually be a really good practice because, and you can correct me, but from my understanding, it's the practice that helps the breath work when we're actually in those moments. So it's not like, oh, I'm mad, let me do my deep breathing. It's more like I'm practicing my breath work. And then now when I'm mad, it's easier to access and I can actually like breathe through it versus I'm angry and really trying to do it. It's like the practice kind of helps it in place.
And depending on what kind of breathwork practice you do, some of them you can't do when you're pregnant. It's just not recommended. And so it can be a really good release to reintroduce those after postpartum or after birth in postpartum. And breath can be very releasing and very helpful. I can link to some of my favorite breathwork things as well.
If you are pregnant, just paying attention to how you're breathing, how deep it's going. That's also very, very safe, right? Because you're keeping your same rhythm, but just acknowledging where it's at. And then through the acknowledgement, you'll get the movement and stuff. Yeah. But check out the links for sure.
Yes. Awesome. Any other final words on emotions? Anything You wanna
I
personally process?
Yeah, personally process. I feel like I'm in a good spot personally processing emotions. I remember even times postpartum that I've had, and it's like I wish I had the information I had now to help during those times too. Recognizing that there's no end to it, right? There's no end to the processing of someone's emotions because they're all going to hit us in different ways. So it really is just a lifetime practice of checking in with yourself, accepting your own emotions, and then in accepting your own emotions, being able to accept how other people feel too. The hardest ones to really accept are the people that are closest to us, right? Because I think about it, I'm like, so easy for me to accept the emotions of my clients. But when it's my boyfriend or my son, it's like a whole nother reality that we're dealing with.
It can be hard, especially our children. I feel
Mm,
that's
yeah.
as if you're a mother, you're connected from when they're babies, that's the hardest, and as
Mhm.
but even as they grow, it can be
Yep.
really hard to see your child experience deep sadness and deep heartache and pain and all the things, and yeah, the cruel world.
The cruel world. We understand the pain of the emotion too. We're with you and we're holding you wherever you are right now.
Yeah. If you have any other questions about this or thoughts, please leave us a voicemail. We have a link in our show notes. Very easy to do that and or reach out to us via email. And we'll talk to you in the next episode.
See you later.